Hi, Ammar. How are you?
I'm doing well, but evidently I've missed you more than you've missed me.
That's never true.
You just said that to me before we went on.
Lies.
The La Gazzetta Ferrari reported that on X. So
Highly reliable source.
highly rely sources in our
Sources
in our
say.
sources say. Oh man,
When they
this
say
is
that, they're literally just talking about the marinara. Um,
your marinara is good. Well said.
um,
Ay, ay, ay. We need a good laugh every once in a while, Shez.
there you
I hope
go.
everyone else
Right.
is
Well,
laughing with us
I
or
mean,
at
I
us.
mean, I've got
Whatever.
you got one, but I'm coming with a very serious face today because I feel like I'm going to be massively on the defensive for the entire
Oh,
video. This one is going out to all two of the Lewis Hamilton fans that still watch our channel, and
you
every now and
abandoned us.
again comment as well. So as usual, please comment. This one is for you.
Hmm.
I'm going to put a very simple question to you. Has Lewis Hamilton failed at Ferrari?
Oof. That's an amazing question. So far he has. I think that's fair to say. I think he's. We will get into the reasons why and where to place blame. And at the onset, I would say 90% of the blame goes on Ferrari. But I've done a lot of reflecting in the aftermath of the whole John Elkann comments, right? And I was among the first to dunk on him. In fact, check me out on X. I put a lot of John Elkann looks like, and even threw a few zingers in here. So those are my bona fides on how I think about John Elkann. But I do think that if you kind of peel back behind the bad wording and the bad timing of what he said, I think there's an element of truth to it, and we kind of got into it a little bit there, right? This season for Hamilton has been a failure. It really has, and I know everyone's going to come at me and say, well, he's got the only win that Ferrari has, such that their sprint win is. So, but you can't have it both ways. You can't call, we never take sprint wins as seriously. None of the drivers do, right? I mean, they like it, but the point difference from first to second is 1 point, right? So that tells you everything you need to know about how those sprints are run. And the reality is the McLaren screwed up that sprint race, and they should have easily been able to win that. It's a great thing that Lewis Hamilton got that. That made us all cheer, gave us a lot of hope. But really, since that very moment when he celebrated that, I think there's just been literally nothing to celebrate. And while I think that there are issues at Ferrari that we've discussed over and over again, I do think that he is also partially to blame for some of the issues and challenges that they've had right now, because he has not managed to qualify anywhere close to where Charles has over the course of the season. Yes, the data will bear out one thing, but if you're just viewing this as an audience week in and out, I cannot think of a moment that we've had any real sort of confidence in Lewis other than that sprint win. And that was so early in the season too. So, it was the second race, I think, right? So, I think he's partially to blame for the failure that he has had this season.
So okay. So I'm going to get this straight.
Cool.
You think that John Alcan was wrong for saying what he did, but you think he was right in what he said. Fine, got it.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
just to
both
summarize,
things can be
roughly,
true, right? We can walk
yeah,
and chew gum too, right?
yeah.
I mean,
So
what he said and how he said
yeah,
it was not wrong. However, if he had said the exact same thing in
Lewis
private,
needs to shut up and drive. Is basically.
I
saying
don't
was
think
right.
he said that.
Well, he did.
I don't think
he did.
he's well.
His exact
I
words were,
mean,
"The drivers need to talk less and drive."
yeah, the drivers need. Well, I mean, shut up means
Basically,
don't say anything, but talk
yeah.
less means that you
Shut
can
up.
talk,
Yeah,
but just
it
less.
means shut
Yeah.
up and drive. Yeah, yeah. In fact,
I
it was
mean,
the
I
title
know
of our last video. But
this is your.
you think in terms of Lewis, that is correct. Yes, he should
Well,
talk
if I
less
were leading
and
Ferrari,
drive.
if I were leading Ferrari and I felt that way about Lewis, I would tell him the same thing, only in private. I would not tell him this, or tell anyone this in public. I think that John Elkann, in his role as is he the CEO or the president of Ferrari,
Chairman.
and whatever, chairman of Ferrari? Okay, he has every right to say that to his drivers as he would to his mechanics, to his team principal.
Yes,
it would be
can
no
we just be
different.
clear
But
about this, right? He did say drivers, plural. He didn't say Lewis
Sure,
Hamilton.
yes. Again, and I'm just saying the same thing, right? Engineers, mechanics, team principals or principal, whatever the case might be, right? He has every right to be critical of their performance if he needs to be. He shouldn't be doing that in a public setting, and the way he did it at a time where he should be celebrating the victory that, Ferrari had WEC as opposed to taking shots. So that was the issue. But again, if this was Toto Wolff saying that, we would have looked at it very differently. So I think there's some element of that.
Yeah, but when Toto said it specifically about Kimi this season, he said he was underwhelmed at a specific performance that Kimi had, and Kimi was underwhelming.
Yeah.
But what John Elkann has said is not you have underperformed. He has told his drivers to shut up, to talk less and drive.
That's not the only thing he's saying.
But that's not the only thing. That is actually what
that's not the only thing. I mean, he gave credit to the mechanics too, right? So I mean, again, I mean, John Elkann by definition in the Ferrari context is incompetence masquerading as competence, right? So there's that.
But you think that this guy is correct?
I didn't say he's correct.
This person that is incompetent, masquerading as competent, is correct in what he said to Lewis Hamilton. He just should have done it in private, is what you're saying.
I am saying that his position is correct to be critical of everyone in the team, Lewis included.
Yeah. Well, but he's not. He's just being critical of the drivers. And
you're saying
in the case of Lewis Hamilton, that is correct.
Yeah. In the case of Lewis Hamilton, the criticism is fair. It's just the way it's delivered is not.
Okay, fine. So Lewis should shut up and drive. Fine. So
I didn't say that.
No, you did but you did.
I didn't say shut up and drive. I mean,
okay, he should talk less and drive. Sorry, I misspoke. He should talk less and drive.
No, he should just drive better. Is what he should do. That's what he should. He can talk whatever he wants.
That's not what John Elkann said. John Elkann said
he didn't even say shut up either. So we can.
He said he should talk less and drive. And what you're saying,
not just he, by the way.
Yeah, I know. He said both drivers, but you don't seem to. You're
Charles
never.
Leclerc pursued it. Just announced his engagement thereafter, or something like that.
Yeah, but you have never. You've never pushed this as a Charles thing. This has always been he's right about.
Well, it's not about me pushing it. It's not about whether I push it or not. I mean, the reality is Lewis has been. But it's.
But Ammar, what I'm saying is that you have said that he is correct regarding Lewis. But you've not really said that he's correct regarding Charles.
Let's see if we can do this again in English, because here in America our English is weak, right?
Okay.
I'm saying that in his role as the leader of Ferrari, he has every right to criticize Lewis's performance for this year. And Charles's performance for this year. He also has
He hasn't done that.
Hang on, let me finish. He also has every right to criticize the engineers that put the car together. It seems like that's the outside of the mechanics, that was the only group that I guess didn't get criticism without actually being told that, right? I think his issue with the way Lewis has sort of vocalized his criticism
and Charles.
And Charles, Charles. I mean, tell me where Charles has.
So Charles has consistently throughout the season criticised the car and the team. He has criticised them on the radio. He's criticised them in interviews. He said the car isn't good enough.
Where has he criticised the team?
Every time on the radio, when he tells them that they have done something stupid, he is criticising the team.
But that's not the reference.
More than once. Okay.
Yeah, but every F1 driver does that every time.
Outside of the car in the pen, he has also consistently said the car's not
consistently.
Good. The car is not good enough.
Give me. Okay, that's not criticism of.
And he said we should be doing better this season. It's unacceptable. Quote. He has said those things.
Yeah, and that applies to everybody, not just anyone in particular.
Right. But we're not saying that Charles should talk less and drive.
But also Charles
Lewis is what you're saying.
I'm not saying that, Shez. I think you're trying to.
Then in which case you.
I mean, I get that you want to defend Hamilton, and that's fine. We can do the defense, but we don't have to attack. We don't have to attack Charles and everyone else on the team. I mean, what are we going to say next, fire Fred?
Because what you are doing is saying that it's okay for John Elkann to say Lewis Hamilton talk less, drive, unless you're also saying that about Charles. I think
Yeah,
that's
I
unfair.
just said that.
Oh, so
I just said that.
Okay.
Shez, you're doing this gotcha thing, which is, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I told you very clearly.
John Elkann also
Again,
is
let's
correct
do what we did 5 minutes ago. John Elkann has been incompetent in his role as the leader of Ferrari. However, that's a seat he occupies. So by virtue of having that position, he is in every right to be critical of everybody that he believes, based on his internal, external analysis, that is not doing the job. That includes everyone that washes the tires, to putting them on, to driving those tires, to being the team principal, and everyone in between. So for him to say, be critical of any of them or all of them, is completely fair game. I have no problem with that. It's the way in which it's delivered that's the issue. So we can parse whether what he said and whether the tone of it. I completely disagree with communicating that way, particularly with the 7-time champion.
Okay.
That's not how any of us would communicate. He's chosen that. That's a failure. But what he's criticizing is not without merit.
So wait, this is where I need to pick you up on something, because what you're doing, and you've done it again, is that you've only talked about the 7-time champion. He talked about both drivers. And do you think he's do you think he's correct?
Well,
do you think
we're talking about Lewis today, so we can.
But talking about Lewis has to be in relation to Charles as well, because that's how we're comparing these two, and I'm going to come to that in a second. But I just want to be clear about what you're saying. John Elkann is incompetent, yes or no?
Yes.
Fine. But he is correct in telling his drivers, plural, to talk less and drive. Yes or no?
In public, no.
Okay, but in private, that's okay.
In private, you can criticize anything you want.
But do you think? I'm not asking whether he can. I'm asking you: is he correct in doing that?
Not that way.
Has he scapegoated?
Talk less and drive more is fine when it's said in private.
Okay, so if he said that in private, right? Let's say he said it in private. Do you think that scapegoating the drivers and telling them that the problem is because of them, because that's what he's doing by telling them to talk less and drive, is he correct?
No.
No, he's not. For either driver or one driver?
No, for both drivers.
For both drivers. Fine. We finally got there. That's what I wanted to get, because that's not what you've been saying, Ammar. Fine.
What did I just say? What did I say that was different? Tell me your truth. Tell me your truth.
He is correct in saying this about Lewis.
Shez, I did not say he's correct in saying this about Lewis. I said he's fair to criticize Lewis Hamilton because Lewis's season has not been up to strength. That's the key. That's the key. He has looked closer. He has looked further away from winning any single race. We can go through the data, but even somebody who has watched 22 out of the 22 races that have been played out thus far could tell you that outside of the sprint win, which now looks like a fluke, you just have to say it. Now, we can stand here and say, okay, is that Lewis's fault? Is that car's fault? We'll get to that, right? But the reality is there's been no point in this season where you could have said Lewis Hamilton is on for a victory today. There's absolutely been no point, not even Mexico. That was not going to happen. Okay. We knew that. Right. So that's my point. So you can say, whereas Charles could have been, he was just this close to winning Monza. If he could have qualified just this much better than Lando, we knew that they could have won it, because again, that was a winnable race. There were times he had it on pole in Hungary, didn't he? Wasn't it Hungary, right? And then they fell off.
But the car was never actually going to be able to do that.
Right. But the driver did everything. But we would agree, Shez, that the driver did everything. What did we come on the next day and say? He did everything. So that's my point. Tell me when Lewis Hamilton has had one of those race weekends where you can say, yes, that's happened. Okay,
so let's take a step back, right? What was your expectation for Lewis Hamilton coming into this season?
A few race wins. No championship. I mean, I was not, again, you and Bax, you were in Hungary where you said you guys expected Hamilton to win this year. And me saying that otherwise would be crazy, but that's not what I said.
Once you realised that the car wasn't capable of winning a race, what was your expectation of Lewis? Because Charles has also not won a race, right? Neither of them have actually won a race.
My expectation is that they would maximize everything that they could from every possible qualifying and every possible race.
What does that mean? Because they can't both qualify the same. That one has to be faster than the other. So what was your expectation?
I would hope that they would qualify next to each other. That's what you would expect. As look, at the beginning of the season, I couldn't have expected Lewis to be able to adjust to a new car because there's just a big adjustment. So there's that, and we've established that already. But towards the end, and I think this kind of goes back to the last 2 or 3 races, and I think Brazil sort of tips the scale on this, right? Even in Belgium, right, there was question about, something with the brakes, and, Lewis basically bombed qualifying as well, right? But the reality is there's no such excuse in Brazil. There really isn't. And that to me is symbolic of where it has been, where Charles qualified. What is it? He's qualified second, right? And where was Lewis? He was third. And Lewis was what, like 15th or 16th, something like that, really close to Max, so it had like a really bomb. So that's the symbolic nature of this, Shez. It's not in the data. It's when you're watching it.
Yeah. So it's vibes again. I agree. It's vibes.
It's not vibes.
Vibes are good.
No. I'm not going down this path. It's not vibes, Shez. It's your eye test.
Yeah, that's
what
vibes.
You're watching.
Yeah, that's vibes.
That's not vibes. Vibes can be feeling. Vibes is
vibes.
abstract. That's not what this is. What you're seeing. It's not because. You don't have to put it in a super time or a tabulated data to be smart. You can watch and understand things too. That's why we watch races.
Okay, so
we don't do them on Excel sheets.
But that's why you have time to go back and look at these numbers, because if you
but that's one part of the equation, not everything.
So Lewis, I agree, fell out of Q2 in Brazil. Yes, I hold up my hand and say that is exactly what happened. But in Q2, Charles was on the cusp of getting through on both occasions as well. Yes, it meant that Charles progressed and was able to show what he could do in Q3, but Lewis was not able to show that because he was on the losing end of a tiny margin.
I don't know. So and the point is what?
But my point is, you cannot say
ifs and buts. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what we're looking at in the first season in a new car. And I'm going to look at the super times because they are important, because what you can't do is go, Charles Leclerc qualified third when he got into Q3, having only beaten his teammate by less than a tenth to get himself out of Q2.
Shez, while you're at it, let's put Carlos Sainz in the same super times, because I'm sure that we can make the case for a driver being better or as good. And Alex Albon, and let's also put Yuki Tsunoda in there, because that's just it's confirmation bias is what it is, right?
I've done those things for you. Don't worry.
Put all the drivers. Let's do that.
All of those things are there, but I do want to just have a quick look at the super times, because look, I think my expectation for this season was completely different to yours. My hope was maybe the same. My hope was that Lewis was going to win races, perhaps even challenge for a championship. But my expectation really was that was going to be tough to do. He's coming into a team that his teammate has been in for 7 seasons, right? Is rated as potentially the fastest driver on the grid over 1 lap. And is basically Mr. Tifosi. You have said this. You have said yourself, he is the biggest Tifosi in the world.
Greatest weakness, by the way.
So that's the nut that Lewis is trying to turn up and crack. Is it fair to expect him to out-qualify Charles on a regular basis and win races when Charles also cannot?
I think when you asked me what I expected, I said have some race wins, right? That's what I said. I didn't say anything about out-qualifying or out-qualifying Charles or not. I didn't expect him to out-qualify Charles.
So how is he going to have race wins? On the odd,
I mean, he can qualify P2 and Charles can qualify P5. Like, that can happen, right? I mean,
so that means that Lewis has out-qualified Charles then. So you weren't expecting him to out-qualify Charles, but you were expecting him to win races. Tell me how that works.
I said not on every occasion. That's what I said. A few of these, right? In a 24 race season, I would not have expected that to happen consistently. I would have expected to happen towards the end of the season, which it has been not been the case.
How often has that? Do you think that has happened? Because I can show you right now. Here are
out-qualify Charles. It's probably like twice, 2 or 3 times, right?
Here are the super times, right? So he has. This is just the playing graph, and just look, to be fair to Ammar, he cannot see what I am looking at.
It doesn't matter. It's the same thing, even if
Only because he refuses to look at my
I'm
face on the camera.
allergic to data. Allergic to data.
Allergic to data. I feel like that should be your tagline.
This is it. Yes.
So on
Come on my side. It's a lot better.
So on Super Times alone, if you just look at the out qualifying instances, there have been across all Grand Prix and Sprint, Lewis has out qualified Charles 7 times. I'll name them for you: China Sprint, China, Spain, Canada.
Oh, Sprint. Okay.
Yeah, but that's fine. But he also out qualified Charles in the Chinese Grand Prix proper, Spain, Canada, Silverstone, Singapore, and then the US Sprint. That's 7 qualifying sessions that Lewis has out qualified Charles in. But more importantly, I think it's important to look at the graph, because yes, there have been major dips. Monaco was a big dip. I agree. He underperformed there. Baku also underperformed there. But after every major dip, you can see that he picks himself up and he improves again. And there have been instances. So Hungary, remember, that was the point at which Ferrari introduced their new suspension update for the rear end. And it took Lewis a couple of races to get on top of that again. But once he did, look, he actually started to qualify pretty well. Brazil was an absolute disaster class, but even then he was under 2/10 away from Charles in Q2. That's why I make that point. Yes, Charles has done well in Q3 in the final section of qualifying when he has got there, but actually the margin by which he out-qualified Lewis in Q2 was minuscule, was tiny. And you can argue again that, look, perhaps that Lewis has underperformed in races. I would agree with that. I don't think he has had the best season in terms of his racecraft this year, and not his racecraft, but his race pace this year. But again, when you hear somebody like George Russell say that Formula One has become a race to the first corner, and essentially it is just about where you qualify, Fred Vasseur, quote, it has become a qualifying championship. If you qualify behind, your race by definition just isn't going to be as good. So those two things follow, and fine margins in a season where the pack is as close as it is mean that like a 10th, 2/10 can be 5 or 6 places on the grid this season. That's how big, that's how small the margins are. So I think, look, if you're talking about a driver coming from another team, even if he is a 7-time world champion, coming to another team where the incumbent driver has been there for 7 seasons, is already known to be one of the fastest, if not the fastest, on the grid. No denying that here. Like, some of the things that Charles Leclerc does in a Ferrari that it just shouldn't do are unbelievable. But Lewis hasn't been shamed by that this season. Yes, there have been down points, but I don't think he has been shamed by Charles Leclerc. And that has at least met the expectations I think that we could have had for him. In my eyes, anyway. Obviously not in yours, but that's cool. Before you come in again,
well,
Ammar, so, just before you do come in, there's a couple of other quick things that I want to talk about, right? So when we talk about Lewis's performance this season and what we expected versus what we've ultimately got, we do have to talk about the car, right? This is a car that hasn't performed over the course of the season. So when John Elkann criticizes the drivers and praises the engineers, I have a direct disagreement with him, because this car has not been good. It is, in fact, been the opposite of good. Where last season it came within 16 points of winning the Constructors' Championship at the last race of the season, this year it's been, on average, the 4th fastest car. And in fact, now in the Constructors, their position reflects that. They have dropped behind Red Bull and Mercedes in the World Constructors' Championship because of that pace deficit, ultimately, despite what their drivers are doing. So actually, I have a fundamental disagreement with what John Elkann says. But then you have to take in the other little stories, and this is where I really want to get your opinion, right? So we have heard stories in the media, and they're uncorroborated, but they have obviously been widespread, that a lot of the engineers at Ferrari have been upset at Lewis Hamilton for the dossiers and the advice, or the suggestions that he has been giving over the course of this season. I know what I think about that, but what do you think about that, Ammar?
Again, I believe that these things should be handled in private, right? So I don't know if Lewis said that. I feel like he alluded to it at one point, right? In one of the press conferences. Why do I feel like he said something to the effect of, I'm providing my feedback, and it may not have been as specific as saying, well, I'm putting it on a piece of paper and sending it or emailing it or whatever that might be. But I do feel like he indicated that, and then maybe the Italian media sort of blew that out of proportion, right? I think a lot has been made about that, right? Because the reality is Ferrari didn't just bring Lewis on to just win races. They wanted that Mercedes magic of trying to set up habits, processes, a cadence that really kind of helps them be competitive week in and out over a 24, 25 race season, whatever it is with when you add sprint. I guess it's 60 races if you add sprints. Or 30 races, I should say. And for a 7-time champion to have brought that kind of pedigree is what they were wanting, because they were replacing him. They were replacing Carlos Sainz, who clearly wouldn't bring any of that, right? So the reality was they felt that they needed that magic. I do believe that on some level they want Lewis to be, and they've always wanted Lewis to be involved in helping design the car and develop the car. Doing all the things that they can to a certain extent. I believe that there's a cultural misfit right now in that the way of communicating is largely getting in the way of what is being communicated, right? So it kind of comes back to, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. We know that Ferrari are a very sensitive team and they don't like to be called out in the media, right, in any way. And, there's been a culture of people getting fired and having to walk on eggshells and stuff like that. So I can see both sides to why there was frustration in the way that this was put out to the rest of the world, right? That to me is the crux of the issue. It's really difficult to know what the feedback is or what the suggestions are or where it is that Lewis is pointing out flaws. Is he talking about the strategy team? Is he talking about the way they're developing? Is he talking about the way they're using data? It could be one of, and maybe a combination of several different things, Shez. So again, I think the action is fine. That, by the way, Shez, I look at that as a success, right? Because when you bring in someone as dynamic as Lewis Hamilton, you are going to get some of this. Even if you brought Max Verstappen in, by the way, you would get a lot of this too. Like, because these guys are hyper focused, right? Isn't there that famous video on Twitter or wherever of Max saying, 4-time champion me, 7-time champion Lewis here in the back, we're here at 7 a.m. or something like that. So these guys are driven. So even if you brought in a Max Verstappen, he would be rubbing people the wrong way. And I have no problem with that, but evidently they do. And part of why John is sort of pushing back on this is to defend that feeling. Now, we can argue whether that's the right thing to do or not, but on some level as the chief executive, yeah, but at some level as the chief executive, you're obligated to do that too, because the one thing they can also not have happen, Shez, is they cannot have a mass exodus, right? You have said that on talent, Ferrari has enough, right? They have enough to put together a competitive car to develop it throughout the season. So there is some level of protection that goes there. I think it's misguided in the way he's doing it because, again, it does not require to be done publicly, neither what Lewis is doing nor what John is doing. I don't know why they feel this need to let all of us know that, hey, we're doing something or we've got this under control or whatever. You don't have to say any of that unless you're going to be like Mercedes and then come out like the post-race sessions where they come out and they openly admit, hey, we got this wrong or this didn't go right. And then they don't want to do that either. So they're caught up in this sort of middle ground, this sort of weird purgatory of saying something without saying anything or by extension everything, which is what we would like to know.
Well, okay, so my pushback to that would be that Lewis often gets asked in interviews, etc., how are things going at Ferrari? You seem down, or sometimes he actually feels quite happy. And often the answer that you get from him in most press conferences, when he's asked those questions directly, is actually, I love this team. I love the people there. I'm getting on with everyone. But I am also giving my suggestions. Yes, I wrote an entire essay about what I wanted to do. But as you say, part of the reason that Lewis has been brought in is to instill that culture within the team, right? And what frustrates me about what you're saying, and I think it's correct, but it's frustrating nonetheless, is that they are, if those reports are true, what they are saying is that they don't like somebody from outside coming in and telling them what to do. That ultimately is the crux of what is being said there. But my argument against that is, when was the last time Ferrari actually won a championship of any description?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just it. It was 20 years ago, and this is exactly why you see Adrian Newey didn't sign up there. I mean, we were given the whole smoke and mirrors of he wanted money and he wanted ownership and all. It could have been that, but the reality behind wanting ownership is having that I mean, it's the same thing we talk about with Christian Horner not going there, right? Why would you want to go to a team that does not want to give up a piece of what it believes to be true to its core, to be, sort of wrapped in nostalgia and romanticism of the years past, right? They don't want to do that. And you're seeing that play out in Lewis Hamilton's work.
So culture is the problem at Ferrari, right? The traditional Ferrari way hasn't been working. Having everybody read the media, having everybody try and respond to it, having the shareholders who don't really understand how Formula One works, putting pressure on the team principal, who should ultimately be left to do his job, making decisions about drivers and engineers and stuff like that. That is standard Ferrari culture, and it has been before and after, but not during the tenure of Luca de Montezemolo. But that culture doesn't seem to work. Go on.
Can I be John Elkann's PR person, the next PR person?
You have been
for a quick,
for the entire video. So carry on.
I look at this exercise more as a sociological study in how leadership works. Right, that's something I do outside of my full-time job here on the Tire GP. I think that there is merit to John being critical of Lewis, because I think what I would say is, hey man, you are absolutely 100% correct in being critical. Can you try to make sure you don't do this in public? Can you make a conscious effort of not saying things this way, because it's not going to fall well in the laps of the people that you have to work with, which in turn creates this vicious circle of distrust or maybe lack of trust. It's only going to set you far back. That's the conversation I would have had in private with him. And I said, I agree, there are issues. This is exactly why you're here. 7-time champion, Sir Lewis Hamilton, with all the bona fides and all the credentials, right? We want all of this. But guess what? We have had 20 years of battering, right? And these people are not going to feel healed and soothed just by your presence here. Like, that by itself, candidly, is not going to do it. And that's why I think some of the disconnect is, right? Lewis Hamilton fans, from my analysis, feel like the mere word, the sort of his mere presence, right, is sort of solves everything, and that doesn't do it. And this is why I keep saying what Mercedes put together behind the scenes was really good.
So what does?
Well, but this is a total team effort. And now the problem here is, when Lewis went to Mercedes, it was a completely different scenario, right? The team was able to build around him, mold around him. He was able to mold with them. It's a different thing. This is now a 7-time champion who is going to be hard to mold, because as you grow older in life, Shez, this is true in life in general and in work, you become less and less malleable over time. So it's not a criticism on him, Shez. But at the same time, there is some accountability he can take in that. Look, if he's waxing lyrical about the team, talking about this is exactly where I want to be, right? That's the quote he gave to Lawrence Barretto back in February, right? Those are the things that he said. He's got to maintain that for this season, because again, if your point, Shez, is there were no real expectations, there was hope but no expectations, then why not just be happy with everything and reiterate that every time? Be boring.
So what you're saying is just accept whatever you've got in front of you.
No, I'm saying there's no need to accept. There's a middle ground between accepting and saying things. Shez, just because I feel about things a certain way every time doesn't mean I have to be precisely saying that all the time.
What has he said exactly?
Well, it's what do you mean? What has he said?
So in public, what has he said? Other than saying I've sent
he's being so down in public
about himself. Yeah,
but Shez, it's also reflective on his team, because the narrative is, oh, look, I've gone to Ferrari and now I'm really in the dumps. That's what it feels like. I know he's not doing that on purpose.
Right? Because it's
Chess,
not.
but it's not just about me taking it personally. Evidently, there are people that are taking it personally in the places where it matters. It doesn't matter what I
But
think.
they are not complaining about him being down on himself in press conferences. The reports we're hearing is that they don't like his suggestions about
that too.
how
So
they're
there's
working.
both. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But that's what you're
the
saying.
other part.
He should just accept how they work and just. Take
I'm not
it.
saying he should. No,
So
I'm
what
saying
should he
he should be less public about it. That's what I'm saying. It's this whole.
Ammar,
it's
mate,
this whole giving
listen,
the document
you can't
thing.
have
But you
both
didn't let me
things,
finish.
man.
That was one thing.
Okay,
that was
go
one
on.
example I gave. The other example was hey, I'm sending this documents or like giving like just don't say stuff like that. Like that's what I would say. And again, this is minor, Shez. Look, clearly and Shez, one more thing. We don't know enough about this, but it is fair to speculate about how these conversations go around in an Italian team from an English driver. There's obvious disconnect in the way things are communicated. There's a tone of talking, there's a level of talking, there's a style of talking that can be different. So I can see why, when we're texting sometimes, right, on WhatsApp, right, our written word can mean two different things based on how we deliver it. These things can happen in a team where they're getting pummeled on the track every week for a variety of reasons, and then now they're having to hear from Lewis Hamilton. So I can see why that's happening. I'm not justifying it. I'm explaining the behavior, not justifying it.
Thank you for explling what people are thinking.
Because you're going to come at me and say, I'm
I'm
a
going to
Lewis
come at
hater
you.
now.
Well, of course I'm going to come at you because what we've agreed.
You're mischaracterizing my position. That's all.
But what we've agreed on is that the culture at Ferrari doesn't work. Because it hasn't worked.
Yeah, and one man cannot change it. That's the other problem is you cannot just walk in there and spray
One thing at a time, Ammar. One thing at a time. So we have agreed that the culture at Ferrari does not work. Yes or no?
Yes, that does not exclude. Does not excuse Hamilton though.
Stop.
Yeah, but
No. Stop. Don't
it's
start
a yes
creating,
and, Chess. Improv.
No.
Yes
Don't start creating straw man argument because I haven't done that yet. Why have you brought in a 7-time world champion?
To help build a culture.
Right. So when he makes suggestions about the culture and says, look, this is how we did it at Mercedes. It won us stuff.
Yep.
Why is that wrong?
Yeah, because my operative words are help and build, not do it all, right?
Yeah, but he's not
That's
doing
why
it.
This
He's
doesn't...
not saying that.
Yes, so it's going to take time. It's good. These things take time. This is why you can say it's well, what if we can say it's a failure now? It can be.
Which bit of it takes?
Oh, culture takes forever.
Yeah. Ammar, but that okay. What I'm saying though is not that he should expect the culture to change right now. That's not what I'm saying. No one
should.
is expecting that. I don't think Lewis is expecting that. But what I am saying is that it is not incorrect for a driver who has been brought in for the express reason to improve competitiveness, either through their own driving or bringing in their learnings of the culture of a winning team, or both, to be allowed to do that. So my question to you is, yes, he shouldn't expect that he's going to make those changes, that those changes are going to happen. But is he incorrect to suggest those changes?
He's not incorrect to suggest it. But once again, I tell you, it's not just what you say; it's how you say. Well, okay. Well, look at that. Now you're here for class, right? Look at that. The brownie points for you, Shez, for saying that in a manner that suggests you're serious, but are not, right? That's the point. You cannot just your expectation is
how would you say
you have to get a team to coalesce around you, right? That's the point.
So would you, because I think Ferrari have coalesced around Charles. They have over the last 7 or 8
It's
seasons.
taken 7 years, yeah, of course, yes.
Do you think that the way Charles expresses himself is the correct way that's going to drive Ferrari forward?
For him personally, or for Ferrari? Oh, the team forward. Yeah, why not? What is he? I don't know. I mean, what are the expectations from him?
Well, has in the 7 seasons that he has been with Ferrari, other than, well, in fact, over the course of that time, has he come actually close to winning a title with Ferrari?
The first part of 2022, yeah.
Yeah, but we know that a season is not just the first half of a season; it's an entire season.
That's what I'm thinking out loud, right? I mean, so I don't know what the question is. Is his attitude correct? Are you asking me if his attitude is the one that'll get his team to winning?
Correct.
Yeah, sure. I think that driver attitude, and everything is one part of the success, right? So he definitely has that, yeah, and he can extract most out of the car.
Out of the
What he
car
did
that
in
he's given, yes.
and in Monza 24 can help capitalize, right? But the reality is, no one person can do this all on their own either. So just as with Lewis, the same thing with Charles. He has been. I think the yardstick is a little bit different for him, though. No?
I'm gonna push back against that.
Okay.
Because Max Verstappen has done that. At Red Bull, he has done exactly that. He has driven the direction that car has gone to pulverizing success.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think he's been so successful in? Okay, he's got 4 championships, right?
Yeah.
21 and 24. He had to fight for it, but there are 2 championships where Red Bull were far and beyond. I mean, when did he wrap those championships up? Yeah. Like 6 races left, right?
Yeah.
So my point is, that Red Bull are fiercely competitive. I mean, even just look at what they did in Brazil.
So Ferrari,
I know we want to give Max credit for it, but the ballsy moves that they put together are just equally admirable too, right? Okay. Same thing applies for Ferrari.
You're tangenting a little bit, right? So my point here is that both Max and Lewis have very similar approaches to how they achieve success within the teams that they're in.
I don't know. I mean, I may have to do a little bit of a deeper dive into how Mercedes operate, but and he has also had dominant cars, right?
Yeah, but how do those cars become dominant, right? Like you said,
they're made very well.
Yeah, but it's a combination of driver and team. As I always say, Formula One is a symbiosis between car and driver. You cannot have one without the other. There's no point having a super quick car and no one to drive it. By the same token,
Enzo would disagree, but
even he had to have drivers.
I know.
But by the same token, there's no point having Gilles Villeneuve, but with no car. That doesn't work. You have to have a symbiosis between the two things. And what you found with Lewis during the dominant years at Mercedes, especially when he started to be able to push things the way he wanted to push them, and it culminated in what happened in 2020 and 2021, and what Max does at Red Bull, where he first demonstrates that he is the faster driver. I think Lewis did that at Mercedes as well, and then starts to be able to push the development in his direction, to push the car further and further, sometimes to extremists, towards the way that he can extract the most out of it, because that extracts results as well as just good performances from him, right? It doesn't just make him look good, right? The results also are excellent, and that's the same for both Lewis and Max. And you can argue the toss about Lewis had dominant cars, but Valtteri was never ever at a point where he was going to win a championship. So both of these drivers,
they had favoring one driver. They were not McLaren.
It's true. I mean, it's true. Red Bull are definitely equal opportunities, but that is the key that creates the greats, right? Is understanding, and this isn't just me saying this, right? This is what most of the top engineers, when you hear like Pat Simmons, when you hear people like James Allison talking about what they want from a driver, what defines greatness in a driver, it is that the driver is able to give nuanced feedback about what they feel in the car and then what they then need from the car. It's something that actually I'm starting to see from Lando, with that front suspension update that he got from Montreal, and actually what Charles was able to do in the latter half of 2023. Those are the things you have to do. So for Lewis, to try and apply those things at Ferrari and say, look, what I want is not just going to drive me forward, it will drive the entire team forward, it will drive the performance of the car forward, because we know that that's what he has done, has to be good for Ferrari. It feels odd to have the chairman turn around and say, stop talking, just drive, because I don't think you can just drive and expect that the team will go forwards. You can try and be Fernando Alonso, right? You can be Fernando, where all he does is take whatever car he is given and drive the pants off it, but it never brings results. It just brings heroic midfield performances. And if that's all you want is to make yourself look good, then great. But is that really what you want from Ferrari? That's the question I'm asking you, Ammar.
Okay, so you started by asking me whether Charles's attitude is correct or not, and I think we've talked about this before, right? I think the problem with Charles is that he is the greatest tifosi that's out there, and I think that blinds to a certain extent his ability to communicate, and I think it probably blinds the ability of those he's communicating to take it in a manner that can be um, unemotional or more objective and less subjective, right? That's the problem that you have. This is why I think we've never seen a Ferrari academy or slash homegrown driver win a championship, because you're just too in the weeds for this, and there's a little bit of romanticism that creeps in, particularly when there's stressful times or there's times of tension, right? And I'm talking about within the team making decisions, developing the car strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And we've seen that play out too much, where even Carlos could come in and be very vocal, openly vocal about certain things, where it didn't feel like Charles was being that. Now, I would just like to put a little bit of an asterisk on it, because I think we have to acknowledge that every driver's communication style would be very different. I agree with your Fernando Alonso example. The only difference is Fernando thinks he's just way too smart for everybody, and he's made some really poor decisions. That's part of why he's never been successful, really. But
yeah, I agree.
I agree.
It's an extreme example, but you take my point.
No, I do agree with you, and I think this is what makes Max and Red Bull's partnership, and you can see why Max probably won't leave Red Bull, because I don't think he's going to get a deal like that, where basically the team is built around him. Unfortunately, at Ferrari, that's never going to be the case. They're going to try to have this sort of team first attitude. And maybe even getting a Max Verstappen wouldn't change them to do that, right? They've kind of lost their way from an identity perspective, right? Where they feel like just by virtue of their brand seal on there, that kind of takes care of things. So I think for Charles, I think that's a great negative of his that you can put forth. And that's why I think there's rumors about him going to other teams possibly. And he should consider doing that, because I think a change of environment in that case would be great for him. I think on the flip side, Shez, again, coming back to the Elkan thing, right? If you have to sort of put, yes, I know we're all stuck in the talk less and drive more kind of thing. And that's an unfortunate way of talking about things. That's a really poor reflection on who John Elkann is and how he runs things. But he has been successful in other areas. So you have to give a little bit of kind of leeway to sort of the lost in translation. That aside, let's not give him that either. If you are the head person at Ferrari, you are John Elkann. You have to take some level of issue with the way the whole performance has gone, right? So correct, the car is crap. I don't know why they changed 99% of the car, as they said, not us. They said that they chose to do that, and I think we know why they chose to do that. They wanted to blitz the hell out of their stock price. It's all about marketing. It was all about that. It's everything with Lewis too, right? I mean, Lewis standing with the horse and this and that and all. It's just like, it was all kind of, doubling down on nostalgia to make more dollars or euros or pounds or whatever the case might be, right? That was the idea behind it. So they kind of threw themselves so far out there that they couldn't keep expectations in a way that could deliver. The reality is that their engineering department is not great. That's the reality. And I don't know why John chose to defend them. In fact, praise them in some way. I thought he was just praising the mechanics, but evidently he's done the same with the engineers too. Again, I agree that this is a poor way to communicate. Yet I think if you're the leader of Ferrari, you have to pull the drivers together and say, hey, I recognize your frustration. I get it. And you should be frustrated, and you should wear your heart on your sleeve in every way you can. At the same time, think about how you're bringing together the people that will support you. And Shez, I singled out Lewis Hamilton for one reason only. He is the new guy there, and he is the guy that does not have a connection to Ferrari in quite the way that Charles Leclerc has, or maybe even other drivers. Like even Sebastian could come in and speak the language. I think Fernando could do that as well, right? It's a very simple, maybe even a cliche, cheesy thing to talk about, but on a very basic level, communication is and language is sort of basic, right? So you can see why, again, when we hear those radio messages from Ricky and Lewis, it's so cringeworthy because it just feels like they're talking about two different things completely, right? And I think that those are elements that need to be sorted out. So I think the feedback is more like
that is another thing that Lewis has had to struggle with, right? That we haven't even talked about is the fact that he's turning up in a team where the culture is completely
couldn't bring
different.
Bono in, could he?
No, he couldn't. And the language isn't even the same. So that's how difficult it is. But
yeah.
But if you come back to your Charles comparison, right? I agree with you. I think Charles is too ensconced within the team. He has become one of them. He's become part of the problem at Ferrari, and the only way for him to achieve success in Formula One is to extricate himself from that, because he's too invested in Ferrari tradition and the Ferrari way. And as much as he tries to vocalize and say stuff that that pushes the car or the team in his direction, actually the worse it gets, because I think he will never go far enough. I think he probably does have the ability to have a team built around him. It just can't be at Ferrari. So if that's the case, if you're not going to get what you need out of Charles, then you kind of have to look at your other driver, and it's not a bad place to start, right? So it can't just be a one-way process, right? It can't just be.
Go ahead.
It can't just be, Lewis doesn't speak Italian, therefore it's because of him that the communication isn't correct. It has to work the other way as well. Yes, there is giving communication, but there's also receiving communication. You have to be open to receive it. And if you're going to look at Lewis as an outsider, why the hell did you hire him in the first place? There was no way. Ammar, I'm sorry, mate, but there is no way that they bring over a driver with that pedigree and just go, right, we only brought you here for the money, the clicks, and a few freebies, because you're only going to be here for a season, because we're going to kick you out because your results aren't good enough. Like, the reason for bringing
it's a 3-year contract, no? So
yeah, but we're already talking about him being replaced next year by Ollie Behrman. That's the level of nonsense we're hearing, right? But
okay, but can
I finish? But my point here would be that what you can't do is be so offended that somebody has turned up and said the culture that hasn't brought you any success for the last 20 years might be improved by doing this, this, and this, that you say, I'm going to leave. Right? Surely that's a dysfunctional way of working.
If we're gonna not take offense, then what's the problem in being told talk less and drive more? That can be said the opposite way too, Shez. Again, I'm not saying
don't disagree. You're absolutely allowed to disagree with the person that's giving you that advice or those suggestions, but it can't just be, I don't like the fact that he's giving them to me, so I'm going to go.
The problem with the reason why you would describe Lewis's season a failure is because of the high standards that is Lewis Hamilton. Any other driver finishing with 17 points scoring positions, that would be an amazing thing. The reality is, because the benchmark is different, right? That's where the issue is, and that's why this feels like a failure, even though on paper it may not be. The other thing that we cannot run away from is that the reality is that Lewis Hamilton has struggled with this generation of cars. This goes back to his time at Mercedes too, where he was neck and neck with George on points. He was getting out-qualified there as well. He had fewer wins than George, right? Or maybe just as many. And I think there was one season where he didn't even have a top 5 finish. I believe that was 22. I might be slightly off on that.
He didn't have a top 5 finish in 20. He finished second in Brazil, man.
Sorry.
There was no season between 22 and 24.
Okay, my bad. I have that stat wrong. I have that stat wrong. Okay, but outside of that, the reality is your boy George Russell, out-qualified him, and you've made the case for why George Russell is great, because he came into that team and and he took Lewis to task.
But
So
obviously, walking and chewing gum works both ways. You can both those things can be true. That Lewis
yeah,
can
well,
have
and this
can
is
be a great driver, and
so
George can
that's
also be a great driver.
no
Both
one
those
has
things
talked about his great. No one said he's not great.
Can be
I
true.
just got done saying that he was the benchmark, right? That's not the point. No one is. There's no. I don't think we're talking about whether Lewis is washed or in a spin cycle or whatever that might be, right? So. The reality is that he has struggled with this generation of cars. So yes, whereas the language of communication could be a challenge, it could also be that Lewis just doesn't have that much of an understanding of these generation of cars. Let me take that back because everyone's going to come at me. It could just be that Lewis's analysis on these cars is in line with how he's felt with these cars for going back to 2022, Shez. He's come out and said, look, I'm struggling with these generation of cars. I don't like these oversteery, sort of heavy, pointy cars, right? That's something that he has lent voice to. So I would just say that, again, when you're thinking about the pie chart of blame, right? I think the team get a massive chunk of it, right? The SF25 gets a massive chunk of it. But I don't think Lewis is without blame either. Neither is Charles, by the way. He is also not without blame too, because he has mucked it up at times where he shouldn't. I mean, Canada is a great example of that too. So if I'm the CEO at Ferrari, if I'm the president or the chairman of Ferrari, I can see why I would be mad at the drivers too, to some extent. Now, I would then look around and say, okay, here, I'm mad at the drivers, but then let me look around and see how poor the car is. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm less mad about the drivers, but I'm still mad, just not as much. That's my point. It's nuance. That's all we're trying to do. Yeah, it's degrees.
Yeah, the problem is that there wasn't a lot of nuance in that statement. Actually, it was the engineers are great. They've improved the car. They haven't. But the drivers need to talk less and drive, and that's a problem. That's an incorrect assessment. That's why I think this whole Lewis has been uncomfortable in these cars is a red herring argument, because at no point between 2022 and 2025 has he been in a car that is capable of regularly winning races, whether that's at Mercedes or at Ferrari, because neither of his teammates have won multiple races
Mercedes,
or won world championships, right? Neither of those teams have done that. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. I wasn't following Mercedes that closely, but I think they're full of crap too. I agree.
And there is something to be said for what I said earlier, that symbiosis between team and driver. This is how Lewis works. It's how Max works. It's about optimizing everything, pushing things in a way that make it as close to what you need to get perfection out of yourself and the machinery underneath you. And this Ferrari has not allowed him to do that. Would I expect him to win championships in his first season? No, because he's not been able to get to that point where he's been able to start pushing things in the way that he wants them to do. But it sounds like actually that is what he has been able to do. And it will be really interesting to see if in 2026 those suggestions, those learnings have been taken on board. If we're to believe what he said about the simulator experience, actually it sounds quite positive, but they're all going to say that right now, I guess. But if those things start to happen, then actually you'd expect his second season at Ferrari to be a lot better than his first. And in that sense, you could then look back on his first season at Ferrari and think that actually it was a much better season than what we have assumed it to be from the outside. But even if you take that out of it, if you just look at the raw performance that you have in front of you, I just don't think at any point you could have fairly expected him to turn up in this team and outqualify Charles Leclerc consistently, win races consistently in a car that wasn't able to win races, and to outperform the guy in the other car that has the reputation that he has. So I would argue with you or push back on you and say that no, I don't think it's been a failure. I think it's been a disappointing season. There is no one in the world that is going to tell you that it's not been disappointing, least of all Lewis Hamilton, who himself has described it as a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I don't think when you look at the cold, hard facts of it, that it has been as disappointing as you're making it out.
Shez, this is the beauty of this, right? We are now in doing a sort of vocabulary salad, right? Is it disappointing? Is it failure? It's all about degrees. The reality is, again, no one wants to look at cold hard facts. The only people who do are statisticians and journalists, and that's great. The reality is, as a Formula One fan, you're not looking at every sheet and every result all the time to kind of make that. You're also seeing what you're seeing play out on the racetrack too. And I would just tell you that the eye test doesn't show that this is the Lewis Hamilton we know. Does that mean he cannot be successful in 2026? Absolutely not. I can totally see him coming out guns blazing and being great in 2026. That we'd have to give a lot of credit to him. We'd have to give a lot of credit to the team. Who knows what next year looks like? But this season, we expected more from Lewis Hamilton. That is fair to say,
I don't
because
think
we
I did.
would have.
You don't.
No.
I
Hang on.
expected more than what
You
he has
cannot.
done.
But you cannot do all that when you start in January and February with all of the marketing blitzing that's going on, with all of the I love to be here, I want to see it.
That's hope.
Those are expectations that being said. Yeah, okay, so you set hope up, therefore you are measured on that too. It's fine to do the objective, yes, new car, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, what do we say about when new Formula One drivers come in? They barely get a chance to prove themselves too in cars that are generally crap.
They have no
and they have no
built-up experience.
They have no, and so the only
anything else. Whereas
the only reason
a
you're
driver
making an
that's been
excuse
in a car for 15 years is going to have learned behaviors that he has used to be successful. So it's not the same.
Shez, this is the problem. You have to be a fan sometimes, not just be an analyst, right? I'm just going to tell you this. We do not give that much leeway to rookies when they come in for a variety of different reasons. I mean, Max Verstappen. No, we don't. Max Verstappen has said this in the interview he did with Gabby, right? He said when you grow up being a footballer, right, or as soccer player, as we like to call it here, you're playing with the soccer ball. The soccer ball is the same for your entire lifetime. Yeah, maybe the goalposts increase in size over the course of time, but for F1, it's very different because karts are driven completely differently than what F2 cars, F3, F4, etc., and then F1 cars are driven. So I'm just telling you that rookies, yes, it's a different flavor of the challenge. It's a different flavor, and we don't give rookies the same. We're ready to can them really quickly too, like that. That's him.
Only if you're just doing the eye test. Anyway, Ammar, I think we're going to have to call it quits there because we've just hit an hour. But look, when you've watched this, have a think about it. You've basically seen data and you've seen vibes. Decide what you guys think is more important. Vibes, eye test.
What do you value more? Your TV screen or an Excel sheet? Just decide.
As usual, please like, please subscribe, please leave us a comment. We'll read every single one. We'll reply to as many as we possibly can, and we'll see you guys in the next one.